One time, there was a guy in a village that every time the cops would roll into town, like he just would disappear. They had evidence of him trafficking people. And so we were supposed to be an American movie production company. Our lead investigator was playing like a movie director, and I was some sort of assistant. And for this raid, they actually had made up a fake company and put banners on the sides of the van and the trucks of this fictitious movie production company. And we drove up into the village and they said, hey, we're looking for extras. You know, we need 5 males between the ages of 30 and 50. And he was like 40 some. In the, smaller areas of Thailand, they often have speakers. And then they made this announcement, and the second he came out, they grabbed him, handcuffed him, we're in the vans, and we're like flying back to Chiang Mai, There were some things like that that were fun, and also just like, you're making a difference. You're getting another bad guy off the streets.
Welcome to Tech for Impact, where we explore the unexpected ways technology drives real-world change. Today's guest is Buddy Rathmore. He's lived a life full of pivots, and I'm really excited about this episode, Ben. It's very exciting, and there's so much to cover. It's a very serious topic of human trafficking. We will be talking about how Buddy has used technology to tackle this huge problem of human trafficking.
Yeah.
And what's exciting is espionage. It's about how he's been using technology to make ways into breaking sex trafficking rings, catching pedophiles, and really being part of the movement or authorities in trying to eradicate trafficking. So it's a very, very exciting episode, from wild beginnings all the way to like really dangerous missions.
Totally agree with you, man. And this is one of those recordings that I just remember. It just doesn't leave. It's got an emotional side to it. It's got a really, really serious side to it as well. Like you said, espionage. So, it's not just about, hey, here's some technology, now we're going to do something. There's also that personal element that Buddy went through, which is the conviction that he had to be that gritty and so deeply inspiring. I think that's something that you just have to give hats off to him.
Like 100%. I think, and even before I mentioned that his life was full of pivots, it was literally because life has brought him to so many different places and so many different countries, and driven by the purpose of trying to stop human trafficking.
Yep.
And let's really dive back into his origin story and hear how he first got started.
I was a military kid. My dad was in the U.S. military. When I was young, we lived in Germany, and I graduated from high school in Germany. So my parents, for graduation from high school, actually bought me a backpack, a one-way ticket to Los Angeles, California. And I just spent that first semester out of high school just hitchhiking across America. So as you can imagine, you spend 5 months on the road, a lot of crazy experiences, a lot of good experiences, a lot of great people, but also a couple times when I thought I was going to die. So by the time I got to the East Coast, I had shifted my desire to go to business college at Penn State. And instead I went to a small Bible college to study the Bible, to be involved in, encouraging people in their faith and sharing about Jesus with others. And so we spent 10 years on an Air Force base in Okinawa, Japan. And there we worked with American military youth, and we loved it. We lived on the beach, and our family loved it. It was definitely a great place to live. We love Japanese culture, and the people are so friendly. So that's how we ended up in Japan. A friend of mine that was also in Okinawa, he sent me just a video. It was a speaker named Francis Chan, and he was just talking about the reality of modern day slavery. And I had kind of known it had existed, but not the level that it was still present in the world. And I just felt like, okay, if we can do something, we should do something. And So at first, our desire was just to raise money. And then when we looked into Thailand, we realized like they actually needed people on the ground, not just money. They needed people to help with investigations. They needed people to bring equipment, both in Cambodia and Thailand. I was just gripped by the plight of human trafficking and modern day slavery. It was just such a gripping issue that I felt like, okay, we have to go. When we went to check it out, my whole family came, my wife, 3 kids, and we were only there about a week, and we were like, yeah, we need to move to Thailand and we need to do what we can to fight this cause. Our kids were younger. They were just up for an adventure. My wife was like, okay, I'm behind you. Let's make a go at this. Yeah, those were hard years, but I'm also grateful for the experience.
Darren, to be moved for a cause, I totally get it, man. But to drop everything, uproot your entire family, including kids, by the way, and then land in a completely strange country, man, that's crazy drive in my books.
I mean, it's one thing to put yourself in harm's way in the cause of stopping human trafficking. And he did mention a couple of times that he would, worry about his family's well-being, because it's more than just about, okay, I have this purpose, this cause to go through. But, it involves intel, strategy, teamwork, working with authorities. And most of the time, there is real danger to contest with.
Exactly. The danger is so real. Like, I would be like literally shitting in my pants trying to do what he was doing, to be honest. And this guy doesn't have military training, right? You would assume that somebody who's doing this kind of stuff comes from, some special forces or something like that. But I think his biggest training is just the willingness to do what needs to be done. And it's chaotic, it's crazy, boots on the ground stuff, man. And
Yeah. And you know what? I think there were a couple of pretty funny outcomes that what happened. So let's dive back in. So here's a conversation that we had, and here are the exciting experiences that Buddy really went through, and his take on how technology has driven these espionage episodes.
A lot of our initial work was to fight child sex slavery. At the time, there was still quite a bit of child sex slavery in both Cambodia and Thailand. And I remember one time, like the guy who was in charge of sex crimes in the Chiang Mai district had asked me to go and gather intelligence on a brothel. And there was part of it they couldn't see from the street. And he wanted me to fly a drone. And this was probably, it must have been 2011, 2012. Like drone technology wasn't that advanced. And we used to stick memory sticks into the drones and then fly them, and it would record everything. And I hadn't clicked record on this special memory stick. And so I flew over and I get it back and I have no footage. Really what I should have done at that point, I should have left or taken a break, but I waited like 15 or 20 minutes and I flew back and, did the thing again. And they actually were kind of wise. Like it was unusual back then to see drones. They actually shut down that night. And I was like, oh crap, I was just getting started. Like I just ruined this potential bust. But thankfully the raid was a couple days later and they'd opened back up by then.
I'd be devastated if I got that drone back and I was like, yes, I got the evidence, but I just forgot to hit record, right? I mean, like, it's crazy what technology was. Like, you had to manually do all this. In today's world with AI and all of this, you're like, oh, it's a remote control. We'll just remotely record it and stuff like that. But honestly, man, this guy has no formal training, no background surveillance. Like,
that's the number one way to fumble the bag. Oh man, you had everything. You had everything going, and then you didn't press record. That's the craziest thing. Imagine that you get the perfect picture and the perfect lighting and the perfect everything, and you didn't press the button. Yeah, that happens quite a lot.
Yeah.
Technology has this power to really help you, but at the end of the day, you still need someone to press it.
We're still the users, man, at the end of the day, and we have to press that button, you know? It's crazy how much technology has moved because I remember like this would probably be like at least 10 years ago. And 10 years
Mhm.
ago, you don't have the equipment that you have today with like
Yeah.
with what all you can do today. It's just crazy. Like how you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
share people and how you can find out who's said what, SMS messages and, phone calls and stuff like that. I mean, back in the day, man, it was analog and now we're all digital.
I think this is exactly where technology stops being a tool and it starts becoming the turning point. So let's get back into the conversation and see how that plays out.
The best use of technology was actually my friend Matt in the States was able to get used Palantir equipment that somebody in the States had been using. We were given like $100,000 worth of computers and software, and the idea was you could plug in like a cell phone, a SIM card, a laptop, and you could use it to check out and see like who the people have been contacting. And I actually said, to my shame now, I've said, I don't think anyone's actually going to use this technology. There was a time in Thailand, what happened was 2 refugees were found dead. It turned out they were being trafficked, and local cops had kind of figured that there was something going on, and they took 2 of the cell phones of traffickers, plugged them into this software, and it, long story short, but it led to about 150 arrest warrants. And I can't remember the final number, but 92 or 94 people were actually arrested through all these networks. And it instead of 2 people being arrested, it turned into 92 because of the technology that was in place. It was the largest bust ever in Thailand for trafficking. I mean, basically it was all because of the technology that was able to kind of spider out and figure out who was connected to who and how. And so, yeah, pretty neat story of tech.
I really like how humble Buddy is coming out of this because even with all the tech and all the impact that he's created, the amount of people that they arrested and, some of the cases that, they've put a hard stop to,
Yep.
he still doesn't, thump his chest and go around bragging about it.
Yeah, I mean, you got to appreciate him, right? He kind of understands that it's not the tech that's actually good or bad. And it's more about the intent and the person behind it. So, I mean, if your intentions are bad, you could take all of this technology and then use it against the greater good. But it's amazing how he does take that technology and then use it to help those poor people who are being trafficked at the end of the day. And he actually elaborates it really well in this next segment. So let's get back to that.
It doesn't matter what the technology is. You have some people that use things for good and they do all that they can to use it positively. And on the other hand, you always have people that are evil and they're doing things for selfish reasons or they just don't care about others. So honestly, I haven't actually ever thought that much about how the technology has enabled perpetrators. The things like network, cell phones, and surveillance, all of those things could be used by perpetrators. We were mostly focused on how do you use technology in a way that can make a difference. Like one time I was in Pattaya and another guy, we weren't affiliated in the same organization, but we would work together from time to time in different ways. And he just was like, hey, I need to check on this camera. And so we went by a place. They actually had partnered with a Thai telephone company and they had installed basically like a hunting camera in this metal box on the cement telephone poles that they have. And it was facing, a trafficker's driveway and would just gather his movements when he went in and out. So there's just things like that where it's technology, again, is being used. I probably should have been more versed on how perpetrators use it, but yeah, more familiar with the other side of the equation.
Hey guys, this episode was brought to you by Freedom World app. It is a gamified social platform where you can join communities around a variety of interests, popular brands, events, and much more. You can immerse yourself in the community that's filled with activities and connect with like-minded individuals who share your passion. It's also the perfect platform for small businesses, content creators, or anyone looking to create a community. You'll find a variety of tools and features ranging from news feeds and your own online store to creating branded tokens and AI-generated content that will help you engage, monetize, and grow your community. Download Freedom World on the Apple App Store or Google Play Store and create your world today.
You know, most nonprofits, when they start an initiative, it's let's do something completely different. What's happening here doesn't work. This is my idea of change, right? I'm the new savior in town, and so I can do help. And that's what usually happens when nonprofits come into an area and try to set up things and become a solution, so to speak. What I love about how Buddy handled this is he just listened and he got on the ground and said, hey, wait, there are leaks in the system that already exist. Where are those leaks? Let me plug those leaks instead of building something completely new. And, you know, this is where I love this whole concept of force multiplier. It's an idea that is so underrated.
But the idea of it also compels us to have a better understanding and more insight into the problem, which we can tell moving forward, it's a systemic problem. Society has become part of the problem as well. I mean, it's heartbreaking. It can start from anywhere from tuk-tuk drivers openly offering access to children. And it really gives us a perspective of how big the problem really is. I think we really need to see why the need wasn't just like aftercare or awareness, but real-time investigation.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Darren. Let's just go back into this conversation and hear how Buddy puts it.
I was only in the country like a week or two when there was an anti-trafficking conference, and there was a lot of people trying to do things for aftercare. There was a number of projects around prevention, like often an orphanage, you know, they would, and rightly so, they would say like this is a prevention or preventative project. But when we got there, like the felt need, at least at that time, was to basically help with investigations, you know, bring technology, bring resources, and just kind of come alongside the Thai police kind of as a force multiplier for them. You know, so we never operated of our own accord. We always were under the Thai police. You know, sometimes our investigators would go out and gather the initial evidence, but it was always under their direction. So, you know, we would sometimes bring evidence to them, or they would say, hey, we've heard rumors about this, you know, can you have some of your people go and gather evidence there? You know, we didn't have that in mind when we landed. It's just kind of what the need was at the time. And so that's kind of where we jumped into. The crazy thing was back then, like 2009, 2010, in most cities, tuk-tuk drivers would come up and they would ask, especially, you know, if there were men alone, they would ask them, would you like to go to a massage or go to a prostitute or whatever? And so the investigators would kind of be like, you have little, you know, and back in the day, like they would be taken to places where they would be able to get pictures and get video evidence. Now you can just go on Amazon and order the equipment. But back then we were literally like bringing cameras in and connecting them to batteries or microphones and sewing them into bags. And my friend Matt still has the very first initial bag that we created to gather the evidence. It was like a little fanny pack. But the initial problem was just like, man, there are literally kids being sold for the purpose of sex, and what do we do to end that? A number of years later, it was probably 2015 or 16, and I was in Cambodia. I was trying to start a business down there. And at that point, I wasn't like active in investigations, but one of these guys came up to me and I said, "Oh, you have, little," and just kind of said that thing. And he was like, "Don't even ask for that. Like, there's NGOs everywhere. You will get in trouble." And inside, I just kind of went like, yes, like we've won, because the tuk-tuk drivers would get a commission if they would bring somebody into one of these places. But I thought the fact that they're like afraid and that it's not open on the streets anymore in Cambodia and Thailand, this is almost 10 years ago now. I felt like we had won, like what we came for. It's still there a little bit, but it's not anywhere to the extent that it was 15 years ago.
I just love the way he says, he's laughing inside, that people are actually scared in tuk-tuks and other public scenarios to talk about trafficking. And that's a huge change in the way people are seeing this whole situation. And I think Buddy and his team definitely have a part to play in that.
But the problem is, whenever one door closes, another one opens.
So true.
And yeah, that's how it now, maybe it went from cities to bars to alleyways. It's gone all the way now to the sea, to actual sea in the ocean. So let's get back to the conversation and hear how Buddy talks about how trafficking has sort of trickled, not just in the cities and bars and seedy areas, but across the board and into areas that we're not usually aware of.
One of the really awful forms of labor trafficking now is labor trafficking at sea. Like some of the stories of the things that go on at sea and the lives that those people live is just awful. What happens is often people get tricked into this job at sea, and then those boats will always stay out in international waters. So they're always 12 miles from shore. If they're fishing, obviously, like they'll take the fish into shore and they'll bring out supplies. And so the boats at sea where these guys are enslaved, they never come to land. It's an awful problem as well. A lot of people are working at different ways to combat that. And I'm not aware of the gains made in the last 3 years or so, but that was an area that I always wished that we could have done more for, but it's a very complicated one when you get into international waters and who has jurisdiction, and that's one of the reasons that continues to be a problem.
Now this is wild. I hate to jump in the middle of an exciting story, but it's amazing how some of the darkest stuff happens in places that no one's really looking for, like out in sea. And even then, Buddy's thinking not just about what he saw, but like, okay, what can he do? How can he get out of this? How can he make the situation better?
A lot of times we just think that, it's out of the way, it's out of sight, out of mind. But all of this eventually gets closer to land as well. And whether it's trafficking people on land or labor force out in the ocean, you've got to understand that at the end of the day, there's not enough talk about this. Because I remember listening to Buddy and thinking, wait a minute, people are getting trafficked onto boats. Like, it didn't make sense, right, to me. And the fact is that people are not talking about these kind of issues that are there. It's getting hidden under the massive amounts of conversation on other things that are happening.
Yeah. I mean, just imagine the mental toll as well. I mean, I pull my hair out if I double book myself. Imagine this guy who's going through everything right now and thinking about his family, his own safety, and so many close calls. So I think the story just keeps getting better. So let's get back to the conversation.
There never was a time where I felt afraid. When we were involved, people that were trafficking humans were not ever known to have guns in Thailand. drug traffickers were. Like, that seemed like a more dangerous situation. There was one time when I was in southern Thailand, and this was probably 2012 or so. I had gone for a hike around the southern tip of the island, and there was a huge yacht with doors on the back, and Zodiacs were going back and forth to land. There was a couple guys on the deck of the boat, and we were close enough. I could tell they were looking at me. I was looking at them, and I just got a sense in my spirit, like, get the heck out of here. And so I left, and for a minute I was like, man, I should go on the other side, see what they're bringing. But I was like, I knew if I saw anything, I would probably end up dead. You know, like, they probably paid off cops, like, however they were bringing the stuff on. That was the only time I felt any danger, and I knew if I just walk away, I'll be okay. But once I got away from the immediate area, I didn't feel in danger. There would be others, like the people that never make it onto podcasts because no one knows who they are, you know. Yeah, some of those guys are really special to me, like the guys who did the work. I remember one time, like, I just was going to give money to a guy. It was late at night, and it was before we had our office, and I was basically handing off expense money. And I just said to my wife, hey, I'm just going to meet this guy, and, you know, I'll be back in half an hour or whatever. And this was early on, and so I didn't even know what we didn't know at that point. But when I went to give him the money, like, I realized, like, he needed to talk and he needed to process. And later on, we instituted counseling, and, you know, but this was like year one, and there was none of that. And so I quickly realized, like, okay, I need to be a counselor right now. I just need to listen. I need to let this guy vent, just talk. And it was so weird because it was like, he's a former military guy, but it's like they're seeing heavy stuff, you know, and they need to talk about it, which totally makes logical sense now. But at the time, we didn't think about that first year.
You know, there's something amazingly honest about how Buddy talks through this phase. Like, we started off, it's not like everybody has this grand plan and how things are going to happen. We wing it a lot of times, right? It's usually a response to what's right in front of us. And I think Buddy took that to a completely different level. And something that doesn't really exist in the nonprofit world is a decision to close or wrap up what you're doing because you feel that you've actually done what you could do, all that you could do. And I think that's the mark of true leadership. And you build something that works, and then you step back away from it when the time is right. Unfortunately, and I truly believe, Darren, that that's how nonprofits should work, but unfortunately, they don't do it.
It's a reminder that what you leave behind has to be louder and more sustainable than your time there. I think it's the legacy that will continue to work even if you're not there.
And, you know, I'll leave it to Buddy to explain, but their fight against trafficking has now turned into a platform for people to go out and create their own impact in various places, not just in Thailand and Stop Slavery, but in Cambodia, in Africa, in Uganda, and beyond. And, you know, it's very easy for a lot of people to think, oh, they're shutting down operations and just overlook it. But I think you've got to give it to him. And I mean, I've got to say hats off. I really enjoyed this conversation as well with him.
It drives back to the point of like how technology helps you sustain the efforts that you've already put in, right? Like you said, started out as a fight against trafficking, but now it's turned into a platform. And I think a lot of that is thanks to technology as well.
So here's Buddy continuing that conversation.
Stop Slavery from the start, we had three things in our charter, and that was launching abolitionist, disciple makers, and Christ-centered entrepreneurs. So when I got out of like connection to investigations, we already at that point had like younger people to slide in, and we were actually, you know, supported as nonprofit missionaries. And so yeah, we just kept it going. And then we actually just in 2024 we had the last couple they were doing a prevention project in Uganda, and they just went out on their own. They started a foundation called Launch Uganda, and they were the last couple. For like the last 5 years, we kind of have not taken anyone new on, and we wouldn't push people out, but we just were like, hey, we're going to be moving back to the States. You know, if there's an organization you could work with, you know, we would encourage people to work with other organizations.
It's a roller coaster, right? I don't know how else to explain this, Darren, because I remember coming out of that conversation and thinking, man, what in the world have I done with my life?
It makes me feel like I'm part of the problem and made me reassess we can do as individuals to help as well.
Yeah.
When one individual is so determined and had so much conviction in what he wanted to do, it's a real testament to what one individual can do when they put their mind to a cause or in making impact in society.
And I don't think it's about credentials, by the way. A lot of times people are like, oh, I don't have a social work degree, or, you know, I don't know about community health. I think it's just the willingness and just showing up, right? And saying, okay, I could probably help in ABCD ways, and just go and do it.
I think the great thing about impact work is it's a field where you don't need certification. You don't need some kind of degree. You just have to prove that you're human enough to care.
I've got to hand it over to Buddy, the way he used technology to basically help all these people out of slavery. I think working with authorities and just going down and doing that just sets the bar.
I wish we had like more time to talk to him about these things. And we might like circle back and one day bring Buddy back. I think it'd be really interesting to have him back on and to maybe hear about his other adventures, what he's doing so far, and maybe in future, hopefully, he would also have a platform where everyone else can take a part in. So that's it from us today.
You've been listening to Tech for Impact, brought to you by Freedom World. It's a cutting-edge technology platform dedicated to building and growing active communities on the blockchain. And who knows, you might end up creating a community to cause an impact in your specific area. This episode was hosted by me, Ben, and my co-host,
Darren.
And this episode was produced by Aaron Joseph from The Surge Online, edited by Andrew, sound design and mixing was done by Snowfer James, and the incredible music is from Cushy. Thank you for tuning in. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to share it with your friends, subscribe on the podcast, and leave us a review. And until next time, stay curious and keep making an impact.